What if we gathered 16 of the world's best Flesh and Blood players and put them head to head?
Belittle, creating a rune chant, attacking with overload, and
there's
that's
the
game!
handshake. Matthew Folks is your second Pro Tour champion.
16 of the world's toughest Flesh and Blood players duke it out for a $2,000 prize pool.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the opener of the Goliath Gauntlet, a Flesh and Blood Invitational, pitting some of the biggest names in global Flesh and Blood against each other for the lion's share of $2,000. That's right, single elimination, 16 players in the bracket. I'm Mitch Leslie, joined here by Tannon and Grace. Tannon, we've been working on this for a while, super excited to get into it. Why don't you talk us a little bit through our single elimination bracket that we had randomly seeded and put together for this tournament?
Yeah, this is one that it's going to have some uphill battles for some players, some really even matches, some great matches. I mean, we've got world champions, we've got Pro Tour champions, we've got national champions. You've got practically everything you could want in here. Can't wait to see how this bracket goes out. We've got a bunch of countries, a lot of the different parts of the world represented. I'm looking at a few matches in particular for me, round one, that really stand out. DM Armada versus Red Zone Rogue. Really love that one got randomly paired up round one. Two friends that have they're like the godfathers of Flesh and Blood, especially of content creation, right? They've been around forever. Folks versus Michael Fang is a really big one as well. Patel versus Horsepool. I mean, you can't overlook any match here. They're all going to be great. Anything really striking your eye?
I mean, multiple Pro Tour champions in this bracket, plus national champions galore. Of course, multiple calling and battle hardened champions as well. On that note, let's talk about this first matchup here. Two people previously national champions in their own rights. One is a current one, of course, Matt Rogers, current New Zealand national champion, and Yuki Libanda was last year's national champion from Canada, and she made an incredible run towards the end of this year's national champions as well. This is the Ice Queen versus the Kiwi King, Tannon. Let's have a look at Yuki's list. She's known as an Alexi player in the past. She's pivoted now to Icelander recently. We saw that from her and Nats. And here's the deck list here. A little bit different what we saw from Michael Hamilton. Does have a couple sort of big attacks, but they might be considered poppers. This to me is a bit more traditional, and by traditional I mean Icelander of closer to release, because it does have cards like Freezing Point. The Rainbow Ether Ice Vein is a key part of that as well. Plus Sigil of Solace and Sync Below. So a lot of defensive cards in this list, Tannon.
Yeah, absolutely. This does look a lot like Michael Hamilton's list, like you alluded to, but no Wounded Bull, a card that we kind of laughed about quite a bit at Nationals, but you're still seeing Light and Strike, you're still seeing Fight and Spirit and stuff in there as well. And this kind of feels like the natural progression for me from Lexi players. She's really known for playing Lexi and doing really well. And I feel like a lot of Lexi players have gravitated towards this hero because in some ways it plays very similar, right? Like your arsenal is the most important thing that you've got going on for you. You're used to playing from there and kind of taxing your opponent in certain ways. You're giving them a lot of ways to make their stuff cost more. You're kind of throwing them off a little bit. You don't play the traditional back and forth game of Flesh and Blood. You're playing more on your opponent's turn and doing some weirdly timed stuff. So definitely see why she gravitated towards this. Not to mention, I think this deck is very good.
Absolutely. A lot of disruption, which carries over from the experience of playing Lexi. Let's have a look at the other side of the table, though. Matt Rogers, who's just someone who has his life revolving around TCGs, a day one player of Flesh and Blood. Even before Walking to Wraith came out, the current captain of Team Dragon Shield, holder of 2 national championship trophies, is on his beloved Dash today, which is a ton of fun. No Talishar in this list, right? So we're thinking it might be a little bit more traditional, maybe less of a turtle up or the Wombat Dash as it was coined, what we started to see over the last few months here, Tannon. A couple of interesting inclusions. I would say, the standard unmovable Sync Below, there's obviously a lot of defensive cards. Reinforce the Line is a classic one. I played that in Sabres Bolton for a while just to try and deal with Starvo. So curious to see if that gets much use. But again, with the option to pivot your game plan, Tannon, for me, it's a little bit hard to say how Matt's going to play this out from the outset. Especially depends on how the tempo falls in the early turns.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're correct there. This is one of the strengths of Dash as a hero, right? It's the fact that you can have the fully aggressive Dash. You can have all the way to the fully defensive Dash, like we saw Jacob Baugh with his top 8 at US Nationals. A deck that I think is very, very good right now if you have a lot of Oldhim in your metagame. The deck's practically a buy. I think it's the most lopsided matchup you can have in all of Flesh and Blood right now. This one's more walking the line of the middle right? You're still seeing tons of cards like high impact, high octane, the full amount of zipper hits and throttles. So you're seeing like the traditional cards that are always getting played and can be aggressive. But like you said, there's still immovables, there's still tomes in here. There's, sink belows, ways that we can get defensive as well. So you're going to see which way Matt wants to really lean in this matchup. Does he want to go really, really aggressive in this matchup? Does he want to actually, maybe take a back foot? How much attacking does he think is going to happen out of the Icelander? Because that's the hardest part about playing against Icelander right now is, if you look at what Michael Hamilton did at Nationals, it threw a complete wrench in the fact that, usually you're like, I just want to attack them and then have Arcane Barrier set up, but that's not good enough against the build that he built where they're attacking you with cards as well. So we'll see, since the deck lists are closed for round one, you know what hero you're playing against. You don't know the cards just yet. Matt really wanted to have an open deck list in this matchup, but he's not going to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a great point, right? Bringing in actually some of those defense reactions is actually more relevant against Icelander nowadays than it used to be. So Roger starting with Induction Chamber here, Tannon, pretty standard opening.
Yeah, absolutely. Very standard opening. Going to help make that pistol a little easier on the wallet as the game goes on, and make some of those really, really progressive turns as we go. Make sure lots of firing going on, get some damage through, and just consistent damage against Yuki, who is going to start at 36. So if you can get aggressive starts, you can put the Wizard player into a situation where they have to walk a really tight rope very early in the game if they take too much.
Yep, want to point out here, AB3 for the Dash player, Visiatronic Model I being used, of course, with the Achilles Accelerator. So Matt obviously can stave off those blue Aether Ice Veins and deal a lot of the time with that Waning Moon. So we have both players drawing up here, and we're about to jump into game. AB3 for the Dash player here, being able to, again, Induction Chamber, get multiple attacks with that pistol if it comes down to it. We know that Dash can do unbelievable things on an extremely small number of cards. That's kind of one of his strengths and what allowed her to play so aggressively. But it might be that Matt might actually want to pressure here as early as possible and get that Icelander life total down nice and low. Especially Yuki running a list, obviously, that includes things like freezing points. She might be looking to, wait out a little bit till she has the opportunity to really punish with a lot of frostbites. Here we go. Roger's coming in straight away. That's a high octane. So whenever he boosts his turn, he'll gain an action point and draw a card. This may be a filter. We'll see.
Yeah, and Roger's back in his happy place. This is the hero that he's most known for, is Dash. And he was one of the most excited people in the world to see Dash really come back into the limelight and really get the lion's share of the metagame that it's had over, say, the last couple months since it won that calling and started doing really well at Nationals and some of the events. So he's super excited that this hero is back, because this is his baby. This is the hero, I think, that really helped put him on the map. And it's the kind of game that he likes. He likes being flexible in the game. He likes his deck to be flexible, and he likes to be able to present whatever he feels is right in the situation and not just have only one way to play.
Okay, we're going to be straight into it here. This is a red high-speed impact. So if it hits, the next attack gets boosted on the chain, gains Dominate. And of course, it itself will boost, which with high octane will gain an action point. So Roger's trying to push some damage here.
Like maybe we might have had a small take back here.
Yeah, okay. Ends up,
there we go.
Okay. Still going to go for it. So that's a T-bone pitch there. I think he just wanted to reorder how he pitched resources. So he's coming in for 4.
With these amazing Dragon Shield Pro Team sleeves. I don't know if you know this, but most of my collecting along with Flesh and Blood, because it's such a collectible game, I actually I get all the sleeves. So I've had like pretty much every one that LSS has put out, all the team sleeves. I try to get all the creators and stuff, and I just have like a stack of them in my office or whatever. And this is one of the ones I had to go out of my way to make sure I got one of these.
Didn't you harass Tarek for
oh yeah. Yeah, he got shook down. I put him up against the wall, grabbed his bag, unfortunately.
Hung him off the doorknob as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
He didn't have a choice.
Note that Rogers here is representing 2 action points available right now with that dice on Dash. And yeah, that's just a block with the 1 card from Yuki. So 1 damage going to come over, which has now been accounted for. And,
also want to point out, this is one of the furthest matchups that we have in round 1 with actual locations for the 2 players. They are playing across the world from each other right now.
Yeah, great point. Thanks, obviously, to them for being able to find a time that was mutually agreeable. It's actually a little bit tough to sort of tee up decent times to play with this kind of
They're what, 12
logistical gap.
hours? 12 hours apart from each other, something like that? 14?
16, I think, depending
Yeah,
on which part of Canada that Yuki hails from. Yeah, so
right.
this is a pistol coming in, and Ice Eternal will be put in front of it.
A little bit of damage leaked turn 1 from Matt. Traditionally, you want to kind of like set up your turn 1 to make sure you get an arsenal. If you can get any damage through, that's great. Check all the way down the list for Matt here on turn 1. Got the leak of damage, gets to set up the pistol and induction chamber just a little bit, and he's going to end the turn with an arsenal. So this is a little bit of a win for turn 1 for Matt.
Yeah, obviously offered a priority window there to Yuki, who didn't take it. Obviously, she will also draw up first. And yeah, getting a counter to that induction chamber, pretty important with the extra resource to make sure you can be getting go again on that pistol attack. And that's when it can start to become a bit of a nightmare. So this is the Icelander turn 1, as evidenced by the tick up of the tunic here. We'll see what Yuki wants to do. Maybe she sets up some form of disruption, right? Could be an Insidious Chill. Obviously, Channel 8 Frigid could be quite frustrating here, as a lot of these Mechanologist cards come in at either 1 or 0. So taxing those starts to become pretty troublesome. Okay, it's going to be an Ether Ice Vein coming straight out here. Fuse.
Yeah, this is really, really one of the impactful cards. I believe this is a... Yeah,
It's a red.
I think... Yeah, this is a red. So this is going to be coming in for 5. And this is really important in this matchup. Not only is this 5 damage, it's hard for Rogers to deal with because it's 5 arcane, right? No, he has to pay resources if he wants to start us. He can't just block it. But since this is fused... Yeah. Right. But since this is fused, if it deals damage to him, they have to discard a card unless they pay 2. So this is putting tons and tons of stress on Matt.
All right. Matt takes the damage, pitches 1 to Arcane Barrier, and then pays 2 off that pitched blue T-bone. So
this is real big for
him
him
to weather the storm.
Yeah, it's a really big for him to have a blue here in response to this card. Shave off a little bit of the damage, only take 4, and then prevent that discard ability as well, because that's part of the plan for Yuki in this matchup is to disrupt Matt as much as possible. Give him some frostbites maybe during his turn, or make him discard cards during her own.
All right, so just working on some focus here. Thanks, Yuki. Again, 25 blues in Matt Rogers' 73. So the option to bring extra of those in if necessary, if he doesn't already have all of them. So decent number to sort of be working with here.
It's kind of like the rule for Uprising Limited, right? Like you want to bring in all of your extra blues if you have any, and if you're lucky enough to have any of your sideboard for Limited Uprising against Icelander, you want to bring in all your blues. I think Matt's going to do traditionally about the same thing, if not all of them here in this matchup. Definitely want to be able to use Arcane Barrier plus pay for, Ice Veins and stuff like that.
So the Ice Vein has resolved and the effects sort of been triggered. So in theory, it would be still Yuki's turn and she'd have the opportunity to arsenal a card. She's trying to indicate Icelander, the hero card itself there. So I'm not too sure what that was. There would not be a sort of a frostbite trigger. This was not a card out of Arsenal, or wasn't on Rogers' turn. So brief conversation we had there, but already, right, the Dash player is getting a card stripped from their hand. Only the one. So not the end of the world. And bear in mind, it's Ether Ice Vein in that sense, in the sense of stripping a card, is maybe slightly better than a Coronet Peak. So the fact that the Dash player gets to come back around to their turn, 3 cards, 1 in Arsenal, and they'll know the Icelander, their opponent, is going to want to try and disrupt them on their turn. And that's when it gets interesting. That's when Matt Rogers has to hope, Tannon, that, like you said, he's got plenty of blues floating around.
Yeah, really big check here, turn 1. This is pretty much the best thing that Icelander can be doing if they're not attacking you for a giant number, which is a weird statement to say in and of itself. The way we saw traditional Icelander and Wizards be built, there's not attack actions, but we know that there are some looming. Aether Ice Vein, one of the best actual attacks going on that you can possibly do here, or spells that you can do, because of the fact that not only does it present damage, but like you said, guaranteed strip of a card from Matt, right? If he doesn't pay for anything here, he just loses a card. So it's going to tax your opponent just a little bit there. You're going to possibly get a blue into your arsenal. And for everybody at home, if you're not super used to what's going on with the Icelander, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get cards into their arsenal that have the blue color strip, because that allows them to play them during their opponent's turn. And that's what Yuki's going to look to do here. If that card also happens to be an ice card, when it gets turned up, Matt is also going to get kind of taxed on his next play. It's going to cost 1 more, if something like that happens. So that's going to be something that's going to slow Matt down, especially for a deck like Dash, which is so resource dependent, so resource hungry, that it needs to make all of stuff. Maybe some real life stuff came up here for a second. One of them had to answer the phone, maybe do something around the house, because they're not at a tournament center here. they're setting up here, so maybe one of them had to do a little something to clean up, make sure everything here.
Yeah, Matt Rogers doing the classic battery saving mode, by the way. Very, very standard maneuver when you have a
I need
life
to learn
counter
this
up.
play. Yeah.
Yep, definitely do this because my missus tries to call me when I'm at an armory and my phone dies. And or then I don't have GPS, so less than ideal. So here we go. Okay, so it is going to be a pitch, of course, over towards the waning moon. Waning moon says deal 2 arcane damage on your turn or 3 on the opponent's turn, and you can only use it if you played a non-attack action card, which is what Aetherized Feint is. So Yuki here spending, all she wants to do is end the turn with 1 card to stick in arsenal, so she's happy to spend for that 2 arcane damage. And Matt Rogers said, you know what, I'll take that straight to the dome.
And these are going to be what you've just seen from these 2 turns is a microcosm of how this matchup is going to go. There's going to maybe be some big flurry turns between the 2, but there's going to be a lot of chipping going on here or there, jockeying for position. Matt's going to have a couple big attacks, maybe get a little bit through. Yuki's going to play, maybe 1 card, maybe get Frostbite, maybe attack with Waning Moon, something like that.
Okay, Matt starting to put the pressure on. Red throttle boost, of course. So that is 6 go again. 4 Icelander can do anything to disrupt the dash. There's 6 damage being presented.
Yeah, and so this is where deck builds can come in, right? Like if Matt is going to be doing these kinds of attacks with a lot of boosting, if he has some of these defensive reactions in here, if he's thinking that Yuki's going to be attacking him a lot, this lowers the amount of hits that he could possibly have in his deck. Now, he's still going to be like probably over 90% of hits of Mechanologist cards, but it's something that could come up, and this is a big play from Yuki.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard comes out the arsenal and basically says, okay, your attackers go again, but it's going to lose it unless you pay 2 resources to keep that go again. Otherwise, your turn ends with this 1 attack, and Icelander also will be inflicting a Frostbite token to make that next action of the dashes a little more expensive. So Rogers has to decide, okay, am I happy with 6 damage this turn? Do I have enough resources to pay to do anything more? Remember, Matt Rogers has that counter on the induction chamber and the Teklo pistols ready to go. So plenty left in the tank here for the dash if they opt to make the play in there. Matt Rogers doesn't have a Frostbite token handy as we are playing on webcam, so he'll represent that there.
Yeah, Yuki can't just hand him one here. They're thousands and thousands of miles apart here.
Yeah,
and this is another little spot of what's going to happen in this matchup. You're going to see, Yuki's cards, when you look at them in vacuum, are less powerful overall than Matt's, right? Like they do less damage on average generally. You're doing little chip damage of 2 or 3 here a turn. You do have these big plays with Aether Hails and Aether Ice Veins, but Matt can prevent some of that Arcane Barrier. Here's the problem, is you're seeing what's happening here. Like when Blizzard is played from the Arsenal, it stops the go again from Matt, and he has to pay more if he wants to keep going. Then it also gives Matt a Frostbite, so he has to pay 1 more for the next thing that he does. So Yuki's deck is very annoying to play against, and you need to sequence correctly, because if you do it incorrectly and she gives you a Frostbite at an inopportune time, it could end your turn in the tracks.
I mean, you have to anticipate the Frostbite at some point, right? You can't always anticipate hypothermia randomly to come out or a blizzard, and you have to adjust when that happens, right? There's not a whole lot you can do.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to be changing the calculus of your turn on the fly.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a block with equipment here. Ironhide Gauntlet is going to get put in front of this throttle, which would eat 2 of that damage, but that would be the end of that equipment piece.
Yep, early equipment block from Yuki here, but just trying to keep that life total high so she gets some chances later on the turns that maybe more important, where she has to start setting stuff up. She has a bigger life total buffer to play with.
So pistol for 2 coming out now. Matt Rogers paying 2 in order to do this, as was dictated by the Frostbite he was given. Again, he wants to try and walk the life totals down until her opponent is within depending, she has freezing points, so you can really do 8 to 12 damage on a freezing point turn like that. Okay, so end of the turn with Spark of Genius feels pretty darn good. Matt Rogers is going to go fishing through the deck, finding a Mechanologist card with cost X based on what has been pitched for it here. And it's a Teklo core that's going to get fished out, providing some extra resources here until that runs out of juice itself.
Now, this is a card that Matt has access to 3 of, and I think this is one of the more important cards in the matchup. Not only is it a blue that he can pitch for 3 resources on the turns in which he needs, this is one it's kind of like their energy pot. It's some resources sitting around.
You get to get it for free off Spark of Genius,
right?
It costs 0. So you just, the problem with those items, right, is they don't have go again. They sort of end your turn. But if you just cap off your turn, digging for a free Teklo core, which is going to give you 2 resources for each steam counter gets taken off, which is, you know, up to 4. It's pretty insane.
Yeah, it's really, really good in a lot of the matchups, but so impactful in this one. And the fact that it helps you pay for all the extra stuff, like we talked about, those really annoying things from Yuki, the taxes that she adds on to the things that you're going on here. This is such a huge opening salvo from Matt.
Yeah, already obviously inflicting 7 damage on the Icelander player and developing that board presence is never going to feel bad, especially forcing an equipment block there off the gauntlet. So Yuki now, of course, sort of having to decide, obviously, what sort of happens on their turn. Looks like that's already been passed back here. She actually has an Arsenal card, so...
Yeah, also pretty big here. Don't forget Spark of Genius. Since boosting happened that turn, there's a card draw at the end of it, and that allowed for a Arsenal for Matt Rogers as well. Just an absolute perfect turn from Matt.
Yeah, great point. This is still Yuki's turn. She actually didn't use her Arsenal card. I think the Blizzard came out of hand, but this time around, freezing point going to come in. This is potentially very nasty. Deal 5 arcane damage to target hero. If it was fused, instead deal X arcane damage, where X is 5 plus the number of frostbites, ice afflictions, and frozen cards. Looks like it's just 5 now. Wasn't fused. So it's a clean 3 for 5 arcane damage out the arsenal. Again, a lot of 3 for 5 effects in Icelander's arsenal are available to it, like the Ether Ice Vein.
And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, where, you know, they're having to pay 3 to deal 5. And that's not on the same rate as what Matt Rogers' deck's going to be doing. You know, he's going to be spending 1 generally to deal 5 when you do these things. But the fact that you can do these things during Matt's turn as well as your own, you get to pair it with Waning Moon, or you get to give them frostbites while you're doing all of it, is what makes Icelander so good. And there's a lot of people that believe that Icelander is the best hero in CC right now, not to mention how good it is in Blitz, a format that we're all going to have to take a real big look at with Worlds coming up. Really,
they already banned Stormstriders. You know what I mean?
They
to try and limit her power and blow up Kano in the process there. So she still might be very powerful, but that's an Arsenal card there for Yuki. She's happy enough threatening 5 damage here, and Senior Rogers looked like he was happy enough pitching there to some arcane barriers. So we'll see those updated life totals when he returns his phone to the table. Thanks, Matt.
So I love when the players use their phones for this, because I've seen one where one of my buddies was on camera, was doing this, and I watched him unlock his phone to do it. So later in the day, I walked him and was like, hey, let me see your phone. He just hands it over, and I unlocked it, and the look on his face where he just like could not fathom how I knew how to unlock his phone was priceless. So note to everybody out there, if you unlock your phone on camera, I will know the code. I'm going to write it out. I'm going to start a list.
Tannon's going to come up and be like, got the games on your phone?
Yeah.
All right, here's a pitch.
Let me check.
Ice Eternal. Okay. Cold Snap coming out here of Arsenal, which is great. Card replaces itself. Also threatens to freeze up Matt Rogers' Arsenal here, as it's very unlikely that this is going to be aimed at the hero.
One of my absolute favorite cards in this deck as well. Just really good at what it does, right? Like slows down the opponent multiple ways and draws a card when you play it. So if it's not something doing arcane damage, this is one of the better ones. Cycles through your deck, slows down your opponent, and activates your Waning Moon. This one's really, really good. Love Cold Snap in these builds.
Crucially, the Teklo core provides a priority window for Yuki to respond to. So that's what was happening. Matt Rogers was getting 2 resources of his Teklo core, and Yuki says, no, before you actually threaten an attack, I want to give you a frostbite. I want to hit you. I want to potentially freeze your arsenal. That might be why Matt Rogers has his arsenal card turned sideways now. It's one way of representing that. So after that's said and done, Matt Rogers takes the damage. He has a frostbite. He gets his 2 resources now from Teklo core.
Yeah, we've seen stuff like this before for like Tunic, right? When people are like, use my Tunic and stuff, you know. So passing priority, this is what makes Icelander hard to play against as well, is the constant passing of priority and the timing of things can get really funky on you. So if you're going to be playing CC in Flesh and Blood sometime soon, I recommend getting some reps in against this deck just to know kind of their range, and just always assume that you're going to get a Frostbite sometime in the turn when they have an Arsenal. That's, I think, one of the best ways to play against it.
So Zipper Hit comes out 1 for 5, and the boost was good, so it has go again. Matt paying through that Frostbite with one of the other resources Teklo Core provided. So Dash having a fun time, not actually having to pitch any cards yet to power these attacks, which means that there may well be more where that came from. You'll notice that Matt Rogers did not pay for that Cold Snap. So yeah, Arsenal inaccessible on this particular turn. Is going to be a Ice Bolt to block for 3. 2 damage comes through. Okay, we're going to have the chess piece, the Teklo Foundry Heart used now. So hoping to banish 2, and for each Mechanologist card that gets banished, you'll gain a resource. So spend 1, gain 2. That's a net positive for Matt Rogers now, and he is swimming in resources.
Yeah, up to 3 there. It's going to be able to, I was supposed to say, load up the pistol quite a bit.
Oh,
Get some more items into play here. Oh, this is getting out of hand.
so 2 induction chambers means that you can get a lot of attacks out of this pistol, right? Because obviously each induction chamber says you can go again with your pistol attack. So very scary to have 2. Obviously, it's only once per once per turn attack reaction per chamber. So now we're starting to look at a very, very, very efficient pistol here.
Yeah, that's something that Matt wants to be able to do here. This allows him to, let's say he has to do some blocking, use some resources to, stop some of this arcane damage from Yuki. This means that one card from his hand that gives multiple resources can represent multiple attacks in a turn. So this lets Matt just be way more efficient as the game goes on, which that's the name of the game in this exact matchup. He needs to be as efficient as possible against Icelander.
Yeah, you make a great point. That the cheaper this all gets, the better. And the best part is that if he ever needs to pay through frostbites, he can simply try and put a steam counter on one of his induction chambers. There's always an outlet to pay through. In the case that he gets stuck with frost hexes, which Yuki's probably thinking at this stage that like trying to play a long game, a frost hex based game, might be a little bit difficult, especially without any developed yet. But she is going to play a frost hex now. This is looks like this is on her turn. She'll still be able to Arsenal do stuff. So frost hex, obviously, Tannon, not fun to deal with when those frostbites start to pile up, because if you have frostbites at your end phase, each one is doing 1 damage to you for the number of frost hexes that are afflicted that you're afflicted by right now. So one is not too bad. It can blow out right when there's multiple frost hexes in play.
Absolutely. This is something that can be scary for Matt, right? You see him starting to kind of set up for a longer game the last turn, maybe more efficient as we're going on, but if this game goes longer, he's setting up to be able to pistol multiple times over a bunch of turns, present damage that way, because he knows that he can't just go all in every single turn and throw everything he's got at Yuki. So Yuki, this is really good for her. She's like, well, look, if the game's going to go a little bit longer, I'll start setting up this Frost Hex now, maybe find one of my other copies of it, and once the second one gets going, that's when it starts getting really scary.
So Matt just spent 2 to load up both his induction chambers with steam counters, which would obviously allow him to remove them to give his pistol go again. No response yet from Yuki. So, after the Tekla core, giving 2 resources, that didn't sort of force a hand. Now the zipper hit's going to come down again. So Matt Rogers doing a good job of still presenting decent density of these sort of fairly cheap and high power attacks. Tannon, this is another 1 for 5, and the boost was good. So let us go again.
Absolutely. And this is exactly what he needs in these games. This is a card that represents a very hard card for Yuki to block because it's at that really good break point of 5. You can't block it with 2 cards of 2 or, 1 or 2 cards of 3. You're leaking something somewhere. So it's not a great blocking card for her. Plus, you're worried, hey, that pistol's coming in behind. That's attacking for 2 multiple times. So it puts Yuki in this weird spot where, yeah, my blocks just aren't great no matter how I do it. And you can't take too much damage because that's going to start putting you into rough spots, though she does take this damage.
Okay, wanting to maintain some cards might indicate that there's more to be done this turn, but here comes the first pistol hit, one of a potential 3 this turn.
Yeah, maybe Yuki saving up to have one of those big end of turn type things. Like when Matt tries to go to Arsenal, Yuki might be able to give Matt a bunch of frostbites to slow down his next turn and deal a bunch of damage to him with Frost Hex. We'll have to see here. But it does look like Yuki's taking a lot this turn. I expect something big from her.
All right.
Yep, here comes
chain was broken there, so that's why the zip hit was put away. This is that second attack off the pistol. And it's worth bearing in mind, it's still, you all you need to do is remove a steam counter from the pistol to attack. So being able to put that back on is something you can do as many times as you need to, providing you go again.
Here comes an Insidious Chill from Arsenal as well. So that's going to give a Frostbite over to Matt, slow him down just a little bit, and start to maybe set up some of these actions where, if any fusing goes on in these turns, she could start affecting Matt's hand as well. That's another important way for her to get back in this game.
Absolutely. I mean, every time Yuki now fuses a card, ice fuses, it's going to be Matt forced to discard unless he pays 2, which is getting, again, another tax effect. Tearing apart the Dash's hand is definitely going to be a pretty scary prospect for them. We'll notice a steam counter on the Tekla Plasma Pistol here. And we're getting loaded back up. So Matt's spending here just to load up both the induction chambers so we can turn around and do this once more. So decent amount of damage being represented here. And we're going to come up with a 0 to 60 here from Arsenal. So presenting at the tail end of the turn, a little bit more damage.
Yuki getting to a low life total pretty quickly here, already at 18. This, though, only attacking for 2, but still, another card that is hard to block correctly because you're probably going to be either over blocking here or giving a card up to stop 2 damage. So not something you're super happy about having to interact with here. And I think Yuki's just going to end up taking this unless she's just got an extra card.
Yep.
But there we go.
This feels terrible to meet that with a card, right? But there was the steam counter on the plasma pistol still. So Matt he's actually staggering, he's syncopating actually. He's sequencing a little bit here. It was 2 pistol shots. I think there was a zippy at the start of the turn, 0 to 60, and then another pistol shot there. So really starting to mix things in and try and get an idea of what Yuki is attempting here. Ether Ice Vein, there are cards left in Yuki's hands, so there's a chance that this can also be a fusion, and it is. So we're going to have a discard unless you pay 2 effects straight away. And guess what, Tannon? If that Ether Ice Vein hits, and if it's yellow, it's going to hit. Then it's going to be 2 discarded unless you pay 2 effects here. It is a yellow Ether Ice Vein.
So this is kind of what we alluded to, right? She didn't do it at the end of Matt's turn, but she obviously had something set up that was really good. And yeah, Yuki's down to 13 and Matt's at 29 here, but this is not something Matt can just shrug off. Like in a lot of these spots here, even if your opponent's attacking you for say like 10, there's a lot of spots here where you can just be like, yeah, take it, attack you back with my full hand. That's not something Matt can do here. There's already a discard trigger on the stack because of the Insidious Chill, like you mentioned. So he's got to deal with this or give up some resources. And there's going to be another one after this from the Aether Ice Vein as well. Not to mention that's a Cold Snap that just got revealed to the Aether Ice Vein. That's going to go into the arsenal, and that's going to get played during Matt's turn to give another Frostbite during this turn that could possibly slow him down or give him more damage from the Frost Hex. So Matt has a lot to deal with like up front here and in the future.
Taking all of it. Crazy. All right, so discarding twice. Sometimes when you have a hand of reds, it's pretty hard to stop this. And you only have Arcane Barrier 3. So even if you want to stop this arcane damage coming through, you cannot prevent all of it. So there's always going to be an on-hit effect. Matt says, in that case, I'll just keep some cards and take all of it because I still want to be able to have some form of turn here. As it comes back to him, first thing he does is steam counter on this Tecmo Plasma Pistol.
Yeah, and with his life total being as high as it is, like he's still at 25 after this, I kind of like this decision from Matt. Yuki's at 13. And if you can start getting her into single digits, which is possible this turn to get her, just to leak 3 or 4 damage through, you can start getting into situations where all of your cards become must blocks. And at that point, the Icelander deck is way, way worse. They're not as good as other decks at dealing with like playing with 1 or 2 cards out of their hand. They need to have these like elaborate turns and, fuse and stuff all the time. But if you're keeping cards out of Yuki's hand, it makes it really hard on her to do that.
So it looks like this is a response to the steam counter being placed on the Tecmo Plasma Pistol. Dash is often going to give up openings to the Icelander if she's not opening with an attack action card. So this would be like you said, Cold Snap that we saw last turn, right? No fuse associated with this card, so no risk of Matt having to deal with another Insidious Chill activation. But still, the question is, do I want to use my Arsenal card? Am I willing to pay 1? And he says no, turning it sideways, indicating that has been frozen. Again, Yuki gets to draw up here to replace that card. But that is sort of her Arsenal play for this turn. There might be a Waning Moon to happen here, but maybe don't expect too much from her, as Matt would have to now pay through this Frostbite, and he does. Obviously, it's a free attack with the Tecmo Plasma Pistol, but because of the Frostbite, it costs 1. He'll pay it, come across the table for 2.
And I think we're going to start seeing blocks from Yuki. The life total getting low, like I had mentioned, and this is where it starts to become annoying to play against Dash. Whenever it's like anybody at home that's playing against Katsu, it's very similar to where if you ever start blocking their weapon, if you ever start blocking,
if you ever have to do that, you feel
yeah.
like you're probably in a bad way, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where this is going to start feeling like that for Yuki. Now she does have a card to kind of give away here with the extra card draw on this turn. So we'll see if she can get something going this turn. Maybe, use the Waning Moon to get a little damage through, do whatever, and then go into her turn with another big play. It does look like we're going to get another block here. Matt
is getting 1 card per pistol attack here. Matt has 1 card in hand right now. Going to remove that second induction chamber counter to give the Tecmo Plasma Pistol go again in those attack reactions. And then you maybe pitch to put a steam counter on it. Okay, Sparky Genius instead. So we're going to be fishing yet another item out. Pretty insane stuff here. Very, very powerful. And again, this is very efficient gameplay. Now, no boost from Matt Rogers here. So no drawing a card, but he doesn't mind because he has a full grip anyway. He has a card in Arsenal. So he's going to come back with 5 here and get another Teclo core again for free.
Yeah, and another one that's going to be just so important. We mentioned it earlier. So important to have these extra resources just to push through as much as he possibly can on these turns. And, you got to wonder, is Matt going to be able to just ignore what Yuki's doing over the next turn or two? Or maybe only just give away one card to stop things like that, and then have 3 or 4 cards come back her way and get her life total, because she was able to keep her life total at 13 there, and this is kind of the turn she needed to have right after making these blocks, was to still have a big progressive turn here, because here we go again with the Aether Ice Vein.
Red Ether Ice Vein fused. 5 arcane damage. Matt Rogers looking down the barrel of yet another set. Discard unless you pay 2 effects. First one will come off the Insidious Chill here. That is a compulsory activation, so it'll happen first. And then Matt will have to figure out how much damage he wants to take to the Ether Ice Vein, plus deal with that effect. It feels pretty bad. Pitching to Arcane Barrier to stop Ether Ice Vein, often the most efficient way, I think, is to pitch a blue and just pitch 1, take 1 less damage off of it, and then you pay the 2 to avoid having to discard a card. But either way, Matt's hand is going to get torn apart. The question here is, how comfortable does he feel, Tannon, at 25 life, knowing that he's forcing a card per pistol shot out of his Icelander opponent?
Great question, Mitch, because here's the thing. While this is really good from Yuki, this might be a little too little, a little too late. We'll have to see, because if Matt has anything left over after this, even like 1 attack from his hand is going to be really impactful because of what you just mentioned. He's going to be loading up the pistol, loading up the chambers. He's got this Tekla core to help out with extra resources next turn. And he's going to be attacking with the pistol multiple times, possibly a card from his turn. So you're looking at possibly getting attacked for, say, 4, 7, 9 next turn, but only by 1 card doing that. So blocking is really inefficient and stuff like that as well. So I think Matt is going to do kind of like what you said here. It looks like it's going to be a pitch, float some of those resources, only take 4, pay, maybe give up 1 card here from his hand, and then still come back with 2 cards, an arsenal, and then do all the extra stuff with the extra resources. So I think he feels completely fine in a spot and can kind of shrug this off almost.
I mean, it is insane that we're suggesting someone's just weathered a Red Ether Ice Vein with an Insidious Chill on board, Tannon, but I think you're right. With the Tekla core in play and 2 cards in hand, Matt has a heck of a lot to work with here. Again, he's putting this trigger on the stack from the Tekla core and giving Yuki a chance to respond. And, that might be an attractive prospect for Yuki again, because this is going to make Matt's first attempt at doing damage more costly. And an Insidious Chill is on board. So this is a card that's going to get fused, and obviously that effect is going to be in play. Yuki does run Sigil of Permafrost in this deck, which is something we're seeing less and less of lately, but we haven't seen any of them actually used. I think we saw it pitched on 1 occasion.
Right, so. Yeah, so say they are in the list, in her deck right now. I think we saw one of them get pitched like turn 1 or turn 2 or something like that. So they are there, but if it's just pistol attacks, that's another inefficient way. Yeah.
Okay. So Yuki opts not to make any responses here, and Matt is going to be using the resources to put a steam counter on the pistol and put a counter on the induction chamber. So trying to show as little of his hand as possible right now. He'll just come in, he'll be probing here with 2 damage off a Tekloplasma pistol.
Yeah, there's a little prod here. Like, what do you want to do about this too? Because we saw Yuki showing incentive to block last turn. You'd have to think that incentive is still there this turn, because nothing's really changed other than your own life total is going down by a few points here. But again, you're super excited about this being blocked by any cards from hand. So I like this sequencing for Matt. We're not going to show the full strength of our hand just yet, and we're going to try to get as many cards out of Yuki's hand before we do that.
All right, looks like we had the go again off that induction chamber. And now we're just pitching to put another steam counter on it. So very straightforward side of play here. It is just pew-pew from the dash. So again, Matt needs to declare these windows to Yuki, because she still is able to act on his turn with that card in her arsenal. So each time he does something, he'll virtually look across the table and sort of ask if there's any reactions, or any responses rather. 2 floating right now, and that pistol is ready to fire.
Yeah, I was going to say, these players probably both very thankful for having audio between the 2 of them in this. This had to be probably one of the most intricate matchups that we've had here.
So Matt's not able to get an answer out of Yuki yet. So he says, righto then, I'm just going to play this 0 to 60. I'm going to come in here, 0 for 4. The boost was good. Another 0 to 60 come off the top here. And Yuki is electing to go to blocks. So we'll see if she decides to, before reactions, respond at instant speed with a card from her arsenal. Unless it's a red and she's just wanting to use it next turn, or God forbid she has the Storm Striders it out sort of while she's on the back foot. But that comes in and yeah, Yuki blocks it. So go again for that attack for Matt Rogers means there's more to do. And here we go. The Teklo Foundry Heart being used. Let's see what gets banished off the top. It should be 1 resource to gain 2. So a net gain of 1 each time you use this. And yeah, we hit 2 banishes, 2 resources.
Yeah, up to 3 resources. Does Yuki want to do anything here? Yuki timing this turn. I gotta wonder what's in that arsenal from Yuki here. Maybe again trying to have another either big turn during the end of Matt's turn, or big turn on her own turn. Matt, we need to get your phone a little more powered up before.
Yeah, it's low battery, a classic.
Put it in low battery mode, bud.
All right, so following that 0 to 60, we just go back to the pistol plant now. There was obviously a steam counter already on that, and looks like we had also put another counter on one of those induction chambers. So this pistol again has go again. So Matt's sequencing is making it really hard for Yuki to divine what his end game is. There's one more pistol attack can come across the table. There's one floating, and there's a card on Arsenal. So plenty of shenanigans here. Matt is probably thinking to himself at this point, Tannon, she's got to have a red in her arsenal.
Yeah, this feels weird to me, right? Like it's either some kind of thing like Frost Hex or some weird card. And I will say it looks like another Insidious Chill is the one here.
Okay, so the only effect that's going to have on coming down is by giving a Frostbite. So it's possible that Yuki is hoping for this to be happening at the end of Matt's turn so that he doesn't, he's not able to pay through the Frostbite. I think Matt actually took 1 there, so that does seem to be the case. You just wanted the extra value, right? Just the 1 damage from the Frostbite that would create. Goes to Yuki's turn, card straight in Arsenal, go to draw step.
Yuki down to 11 here, but is going to be going up to 4 cards plus the Arsenal. Matt down to 20 here, but if Matt has any big aggressive turn here, Yuki's going to be pretty incentivized to be blocking quite a bit. So Yuki's on the back foot. She needs to have one of the turns that's not as formable from Matt.
She's going to have to block. Matt doesn't have a card forced out of his hand at all, right? And that's such a scary prospect. Looking across at a dash opponent that's just got 2 free resources from Teklo Core, has one of those induction chambers already charged up, has a steam counter on the Teklo Plasma Pistol. There's a lot to work with here for Matt. And again, he's obviously offering this window to Yuki now as he's asked to see her graveyard. So he knows exactly what he might be dealing with here. And important for Matt. Normally in person, you'd ask to reach across and have a look, and Matt just trying to see maybe how many more Ether Ice Veins in there. Maybe if there's a freezing point that could come down and cause some problems. Plenty for Matt to consider. But he's at 20, which is a relatively safe life total here. Maybe not against Kano, but against Icelander, it's not as bad.
Yeah, a lot of the best players in the world, when they're in a position like this, where you feel pretty far ahead and you have like a good turn set up, you sort of think to yourself, how do I lose from here? Like, what's the worst case scenario and how do I avoid that? And I think that's what Matt's doing. He's like, let me see your graveyard. Let me see what's going on here. Where do I lose the game from here? And let's avoid that as much as possible. And that's going to start with an attack for 4.
Zipper hit here, red. Matt obviously paying for that. One of the resources got used to power an induction chamber, 1 on the Zipper hit. And an Emeritus Scolding coming out here from Yuki Libenda, which won't block its entirety. So some damage leak here of 1, taking Yuki to 10.
About to get into double digits. Uber really getting close to desperate times. In fact, I think this turn has already started the desperate times, because you're going to be attacked probably 3, 4, 5 times this turn.
Yeah, Yuki might have to go with whatever she has up her sleeve. If there's a chance that she can disrupt Matt, there's 2 Insidious Chills on board. So if there's any way she can create an Ice Fuse opportunity, she can potentially tear Matt's hand to shreds. It just has to happen before all this damage comes in. She takes 2 from the pistol.
She takes 2, yeah. So timing is really, really important here. This is one of the hardest parts about playing Icelander, is just not knowing, how your cards function together, because your deck is a little bit, combo centric. But the timing of your stuff so important, and what really sets the good Icelander players from the great Icelander players.
And Matt can just sit back here and say, okay, well, I'm just going to put a steam counter on my pistol here. Are you going to respond? Is there anything you want to do? Okay, well, I'm going to present 2 more damage here. It costs me so little to do this, but for you, it's 25% of your life now every time you let this pistol hit. So I'm asking for a card. Pretty soon I'm going to be asking for a card every time I do this. We call it Kadachi Lock when you're at 1 life and Katsu's hitting with, these 1 damage attacks per turn. Pistol Lock as well for dash is absolutely a real thing. And this would be Yuki's 2nd card that she's had to dedicate to a block this turn. At least the first one was able to get its full 3 block value. But from here on out, that's not guaranteed.
Yeah, I like the way that Matt's doing this turn. You kind of alluded to this, where Yeah, timing is important here, right? And you're not going to give her a chance to really shred your hand too much because, you start out with the attack from hand with a ton of cards left over. So you can pay for some stuff, have some cards left over. But now you're just moving all in on paying for the pistol of floating resources. So if something were to happen and say like your hand gets shredded, you can still pay for a few things, have resources left over floating, and then pump all of it into the pistol and still do a bunch of attacks this turn. So this is kind of the nightmare for Yuki here is the fact that Matt can do all these things with all of his cards. Yeah, he can do all these things with all these cards. If this were more of a traditional opponent's deck, where you like pay for a card, play a card, pay for a card, play a card, her timing might be good enough to get her out of this. But I don't know if it's going to be good enough against Dash doing all of these things with their little items. They're tinkering all over the place with all their stuff.
Yeah, again, it's death by 1,000 cuts here. Matt Rogers is inflicting right now. Yuki, to our knowledge, 2 cards in hand right now, so that's enough to pay for and fuse something that is sort of in that arsenal. And this is getting obnoxious, right? This is a zipper hit now coming down, a blue zipper hit, so just a 1 for 3 go again. But this is extremely relevant amount of damage. There's a wall where Yuki might just have to throw the shields up here and see what can be done. This is a card being pitched, so we're about to see something come out of this arsenal now. And again, it's an ether hail, so maybe not necessarily, the most spectacular response from Yuki, but a chance to push some damage over here and again inflict that frostbite.
Yeah, so this is a blue ether hail since it's from the arsenal during turn. It's going to deal 2. It's not an I was going to say it is an ice card. I apologize. So it is going to give the
fuse here.
Yeah, there's no fuse, is what it is. So there's none of the other extra stuff added on, but there is the tack added on for Matt here. So he's thinking about what he wants to do. If he wants to do anything in response to all this, this is just a little bit of damage here. I think he can shrug that part off. I think he's thinking about what he's going to do with his resources for the rest of this turn and how he's going to pan out his turn.
Yeah, the 1 resource tax is not irrelevant, but this is one of the more lower powered plays that Yuki can make from her arsenal, especially on a turn where your opponent is getting scarily close here to sort of annihilating you. So Matt here looks like he's opting not to pitch at all to that arcane barrier. So take 2 damage. He's representing a frostbite there. And of course, the waning moon's going to follow it up here. Yuki now presenting 3 arcane damage.
Yeah, so this is where you're seeing Yuki. This is the game plan she wants, right? Maybe earlier in the game would have been a little bit better for this, but presenting a little bit of damage here or there, but also taxing your opponent's resources and the cards in their hand as the game goes on. It just took her a little bit too long to get everything kind of going together with the Frost Hex and the Insidious Chills and maybe not being able to fuse in a couple spots where you needed to. And it gives Matt that life buffer. You can see with the first 2, he's just like, yeah, take it. With this, he's just like, yeah, take it. Like, I'm down to 15.
He's thinking, though.
Yeah, he's thinking at least. He's like thinking, do I need to stop here? Do I have extra resources left over this turn? Or is it better for me to just attack with a bunch of stuff? And it looks like the peak's going to come out to block here, too.
Yeah, I mean, again, all of that damage that Yuki presented there was before blocks. So she still has an opportunity with presumably the 1 card left in her hand, plus that 2 block value on Coronet Peak to prevent some of this damage. But that's coming in for its full value. Yuki taking a decent hit there down to 5. Yeah,
this is starting to get really, really scary for Yuki here. Matt has that pistol looming still. Here we go. Let's say he's going to pitch for some resources, pay into that. Probably just go ahead and activate something. Yeah, go ahead and get rid of this frostbite. Don't want to take the extra damage at the end of the turn.
So pay 2 into this to gain 2 again. So definitely not as a net resource gain, but it does get rid of that frostbite here. As that's what Matt is indicating.
Yep, going to make sure not to take any of the extra damage there.
Yep, it's basically you're shrugging off a frostbite for free.
Yeah, you're paying through stuff. Yeah, just make sure Yuki doesn't get any free value here.
It's pay 2 to gain 2, essentially. Here's a zipper hit coming in once more, and this time at least it's a yellow one. Still extremely relevant damage. Yuki has 1 card left in hand. If she blocks with this, she can't tuck anything into her arsenal, which means she'll have an entire turn cycle of not being able to interact with Matt on Matt's turn. This is a very unpleasant situation to be in as this Icelander, especially against an opponent who can chip at you with these small incremental bits of damage, right? 2 damage each time from the pistol is frustrating. And so seeing Matt present this card right now it doesn't feel good for the Icelander player. 2 block from the Coronet Peak going to be thrown in front of her, but that is a fragile piece of kit. And that blade break means that the peak will now no longer be available to Yuki after using it to block. And here's a pistol coming after it.
And Yuki pretty much has to block with an equipment piece here. I think if she blocks with a card from hand, which I just don't think she can. Like if you block with a card from hand, I think you just don't present any forward momentum going into the turns after this, and you have no chance to get anything done
This is
from
it.
here on out. Yep.
The Achilles accelerator. If you boosted, you gain an action point, and that action point's being used by Matt Rogers to load up the pistol and fire again, forcing that last card out of Yuki's hand. Again,
that was going to be a big one too. That was going to be a hypothermia. So that was going to be something that could have possibly gotten Yuki back in this game, slowed Matt down just a little bit, but that's no cards in hand for Yuki. This is that disaster scenario you were mentioning, Uber, where she has to just pass back over with nothing tucked away in the arsenal. So Matt just gets carte blanche to just do whatever he wants here.
Instead of loading a silver bullet, she threw it at her assailant because the hypothermia would have made it impossible for Matt Rogers' attacks to go again. So wouldn't have been multiple pistol attacks, wouldn't have been multiple attack actions from hand, just the one on his next go around. If she could get it into her arsenal, which she wasn't able to do. So now she has an arsenal-less turn, forced to block from hand for each of these pistol attacks. And for those of you familiar with how this matchup works, it's unlikely that Yuki has enough cards to put in front of these attacks.
Yeah, and you can see Matt, whenever some of these players, I've watched them a lot, you can see when they pick up the pace a little bit, they see the finish line. And you see Matt, he's playing a little bit faster. Yeah, he sees the finish line. He's ground his opponent into this spot that he's been crafting the entire game. He's going to just keep attacking for 2, and then eventually he's going to attack for one of the break points, 4 or 5. And that's going to be too impossible for Yuki to be able to stop with the amount of cards that she has left over in her hand. And it looks like that's what he's considering right now. Do I want to attack with a card from hand? How do I want to do this? I've got 2 resources left over. Let me make sure all of this is fine. Make sure you don't misstep here.
Yeah, I mean, Matt has an action point currently. He can just load up the pistol again. Yeah. His concern is maybe not being able to finish Yuki if she has a way to intervene with Storm Striders. But again, that would be pretty unlikely as Yuki didn't get to sculpt her hand. She had to use all of it to block last turn and then just draw up. But Matt is trying to play around that possibility. It looks like he says, I'm happy enough loading the pistol again and going one more time. So he's going to present another. Okay, loads it up, but instead comes in with a 0 to 60. Excuse me. So 4 damage here. Yuki needs 2 cards to block this, in theory.
Say could maybe I was gonna say could give up the tunic here. Looks like she's going to, but one of her last pieces of equipment here that can do some extra blocking. Trying desperately to get through this turn with a card in her hand. I don't know if she's gonna be able to do it.
This is frightening. The high speed impact now coming out at red. Comes in for a break point. It's 4 damage, and that is going to be the game. Yuki Lee Bender unable to hold off the Kiwi King, Matt Rogers, coming in with a dazzling array of attacks, and again, going very, very wide, even up against the deck like Yuki's that is designed to make that game plan untenable. Is absolutely brutal stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw, we mentioned the game plan, right? Of like what Matt was trying to do in this matchup and what Yuki was trying to do. And Matt was able to successfully pull off his game plan. While Yuki, some turns did and some turns didn't. And I felt like that was the real key to this matchup. Plus the fact that Matt gets to just attack for, 3 to 5 times a turn. And a lot of it just being very annoying pistol shots. Early in the game, you can kind of shrug them off, right? You're like, oh, it's just 2. I'll just take it a couple of times. But that starts to really add up and put you into weird spots. And, you mentioned this, blocking that card, not only does it feel bad, it's so inefficient in a lot of the spots.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, there are some 2 blocks floating around in the sort of ice department. There's non-attack actions, but it never feels good to have to do it that way. The players are discussing here, obviously, that last attack, the high speed impact did end the game. Matt just obviously doesn't see fit to, to add insult to injury by, representing the 0 life total of Yuki's there after it's a fact that's plainly known to both of these players. So congratulations to Matt Rogers to be advancing here. And commiserations, of course, to the Ice Queen, who's not able to outlast this extremely broad onslaught coming the way of Matt Rogers. And it's great to see Tannon and Matt sleeve up the dash and get some results.
Yeah, it's really nice to see, him go back to what I would say is like his first love in this game. He's really, really known for the hero dash. It's nice to see him be able to play it. He's been kind of an Oldham stand for like the last about year-ish since Tales of Aria's come out. He's been playing that a lot of Starvo as well. Matt's generally a best deck kind of player, whatever's the best deck in the format. But dash was one of his first loves. Also, it's sad to see Yuki go. This is a single elimination tournament, so she will be eliminated from tournament. But this isn't the last we've heard or seen of Yuki Lidbender. Not only is there a chance she'll be back for subsequent tournaments, but she is a mainstay on the competitive circuit for Flesh and Blood. And as you said before, lots of top finishes, and I expect more in her career in the future as well.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at the bracket then going forward. You can see here, this is only our first game out of the way. Matt Rogers will be advancing to the next round, and we'll be playing the winner of Lundqvist versus Hamilton there. Quite the matchup that we will be covering a little bit later on. But for now, we are going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back with Issak Krut, the Canadian prodigy, going up against New Zealand's favourite son, now living in Australia, not to be confused with New Zealand's favourite son that still resides in New Zealand. It's going to be Hayden Dale, one half of Arsenal Pass, going head-to-head. Fantastic matchup. Going to be really exciting, so stick around for that. We'll see you on the other side of the break here at the Goliath Gauntlet.
The Goliath Gauntlet is brought to you by FAB Cards, where reality and fantasy meet. Go to kfabecards.com for all your Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and Flesh and Blood needs. FAB Cards. Be who you want to be.
Welcome back, everybody, to our second matchup of this Goliath Gauntlet Invitational. I'm Mitch Leslie again, joined this time by Matt DeMarco with Flake. What's up, man? Great to finally be in the booth with you.
This is it. This is the icebreaker, as it were, as I'm coming off of what I like to call metric Thanksgiving here in Canada. So I'm full. The belly is full. The heart is full. This is a tournament that I'm very, very excited to be a part of from the get-go. It's been a long time coming, but here we are.
Yeah, here to have a bunch of fun and see some of the finest players in the Flesh and Blood community go at it. This matchup is really exciting. Another one that you might not sort of get every day or at every sort of tournament. We have young gun prodigy out of Canada, Issak Krut, going up against one half of Arsenal Pass. It's going to be Hayden Dale. I'm not sure if these two have played in the past, but I mean, there's a huge amount of accolades for both of these players, right? I mean, Issak, only having started midway through the Monarch RTN season, has basically top 8'd one of every kind of Flesh and Blood tournament and has a battle-hardened win. You've gone up against him before, I'm sure, Flake, at your locals. So obviously, pretty terrifying out there in Toronto. So I'm sure you know what to expect here.
This guy does not take a day off, whether it's a ProQuest, whether it's Nationals, whether it's a casual armory on a sunny Sunday afternoon. This guy is just out there lurking all the time. It has been a haunting, reality that no matter where I am, he will be there, and he is usually my basically my 0-1. He is my X1 every single time. The Iceman, Issak Krut, is a man of few words, but many accolades, as you said. This matchup is something that you'll only really see on the big stage. Hayden Dale versus Issak Krut is something you might get at Worlds if the pairings line up, at a calling perhaps, but otherwise a Pro Tour. But this is a rare treat for us because it is two of the very best.
Yeah, let's have a look at Isaac's deck here as well. The only player actually registering a Briar list for this particular tournament, and it's pretty distinctive, Flake. I mean, straight away you can see that this is a deck that's definitely governed by the deck building restrictions that belittle places on you, but if you can conform to them, oh, it's incredibly powerful.
Well, I don't want to go ahead and harp down Matt Folks's, bark up that tree, but he has been touting this card as a true powerhouse, as the one true, the ring of power, as it were, that he's been trying to cast into Mount Doom forever. Unfortunately, it is still here, and it is still a driving force. It is, it's a go again effect. It allows you to go ahead and tutor out one of those non-attack actions, which is what Rosetta Thorn wants. You need the two ingredients to really get the power level on that. And the way that aggressive lists are typically running this is that you're playing your Belittle to fetch either the single blue Minnowism for pitch fuel, or the reds to just supercharge a particular turn. But there's nothing much really that's all that surprising. You do have the one Smashing Good Time in case, but we're not going to see that particularly in this matchup.
I think the prompts of plenty is interesting. Obviously, Overload coming in now much more if you're relying on not only half of the embodiment of Lightning with that red Minnowism. A lot of decks, Fire obviously prefers maybe some of the blue Minnowisms for the resources. Briar wants that non-attack action plus the pump on damage. But let's go across and talk about our other competitor here, Hayden Dale, who is the 2021 Australian national champion. He is a Kiwi, just to be clear, and that one resides over there. And yeah, like I think the winner of one of the original callings back in 2019 in Sydney, and one half of Arsenal Pass. Obviously, an absolute resume on this gentleman here, and he has registered one of his true loves. He's coming in today with a Rhinar deck. Obviously, our only Rhinar player here. A hero that, if you know Hayden, if you've listened to him talk, has always been quite close to his heart. And there's a little bit of spice in this list as well, Flake.
Oh, certainly. There's all kinds of great pieces of. I mean, 6 is the magic number in this case. You want to be discarding the 6s, creating the intimidate effect off Rhinar. Rhinar is a very attractive pick. It had a very good showing in one of the more difficult nationals, which would be Canada. Losing ultimately to Tarek Patel on Oldham in the finals, but there were 2 Rhinars who made the top 8 because it's a good way to go ahead and circumvent a lot of the tomfoolery that certain decks are able to present by just peeling away your cards and smashing tall. That's just one easy way to get the win. The problem is in that case, Uber, is that you do need to tailor your deck or your hand the proper way, creatively, edge the RNG in your favor so that the discards are always in your favor. And ultimately, let's be real here, a lot of your big turns are relying on some favorable Scabskin leather rolls.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's obviously a bit of sculpting that needs to happen with the hand. Also, there's some of these sort of go again, sort of generic attack actions, right? Life for a life, also Scar for a Scars in the deck. So that's definitely an aggressive slant you can bring in there. Obviously, you're not always as resilient to having your hand stripped as Rhinar, which is something the Ice meta does really well. But hey, enough about that. You got the deck lists here. The stage is set here. Isaac Krut going up against Hayden Dale. Without further ado, let's jump into this match. Pretty standard looks for the Runeblade side with the Spellbound Creepers here. You can do some really nasty stuff with that if you get the opportunity, and both sides obviously have our Crowns of Provenance.
The Gambler's Gloves there might save the day here for Hayden, because this is going to be a matchup, and like we've very much played in 2021 and into the 2022 season, was blocking. Who cares? It's not necessary. You go down that decision tree of, okay, well, is there a non-hit effect? No. Is it lethal? No. Am I blocking? No. You just basically check all the marks off of in all the boxes. And we're starting with a barraging beatdown here. And again, ultimately, this is going to be a situation where these attacks are going to be massive. And the beauty of Rhinar playing on turn 0 and having that first option is that typically players are very reluctant to throw cards at their opponent, because it allows their opponent to filter their hand and create a more favorable, clapback with all the momentum in their favor. But when you're peeling cards away, you can sneak through for damage in certain cases. And Hayden Dale right now is presenting the Romping Club after the Intimidation. So 2 cards are going to block this. It is a Minnowism and a Yellow Snatch.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an attack for 7 if it's not defended by less than 2 equipment cards. So Isaac blocks that out pretty comfortably here. Hayden definitely sculpting and filtering to some degree. Maybe doesn't want to sit on that for too much longer. Throws that Arsenal down. Isaac obviously not too bothered. He's able to draw up. And then we start off with the Gorganian Tome here. So already the cards are starting to flood into Isaac's hand. And don't forget, that is one half of that embodiment of Lightning that Briar loves to rely on so much.
It's a great opener in any case. Obviously, it can't really block, it can't pitch, it can't do anything. It's a very unique card. It's a one of. So you're going to play it to draw a card, but like you mentioned, it's half of the recipe for a embodiment of Lightning token. It's half the recipe for the Rosetta Thorn being supercharged for the 2/2. It's just a great opener ultimately. The question is what else is Isaac holding? But that's a big one over there. This is the best way to start your turn.
Yeah, that's frightening. Channel Mount Heroic comes down, of course, creates an embodiment of Lightning. We have 2 Earth cards in the pitch, so no dramas about that one. Big setup here for Isaac as we have a Grasp activation to create a Rune Chant. And again, comes in with a Rosetta Thorn. Pretty comfortable, 2, 2, and 1 off the top. And much of this turn was designated as setting up that Channel Mount. But Hayden now needs to be very wary of what comes next.
So in this case, it's only a 2+1 because there was no attack action that was led on top of this. What I think Isaac's doing here is he's creating a situation where his next turn is going to be an absolute killer, because the Channel Mount Heroic will live on to the next turn, and he's going to open his turn with a free go again from the embodiment of Lightning. The Rosetta will not trigger. It has to be an attack action card. So right here, a block with the That All You Got is a nice way to sort of soak some of this damage and replenish your hand. However, the next turn for Isaac is going to be pure fireworks.
No doubt about it. Okay, I get one pass, right, as a caster missing the attack action on the Briar.
I'll give you
Rosetta
one.
activation. I
Uber.
get one pass. All right.
In golf we call this a breakfast ball. Basically, your first swing of the day doesn't count. It's basically a free mulligans. That's
A
your breakfast
freebie.
ball.
I'll take that one. Go easy on me in the comments there. I mean, Hayden blocking with that's all you got means that he obviously comes back with a full grip here, which is important. He needs to put some pressure now on a Briar who we know is setting up. Life for a Life comes in first. Hayden Dale took a little bit of damage to sort of set this one up. And of course, you gain a life straight away and you get that go again. So pretty cheap, one cost coming straight out of the hand here.
Yeah, there's so many cards lately that have just kind of come out of the woodwork. They've existed forever. Life for a Life, Wounded Bull is basically kind of, it's the flavor of what US Nats were. Is like, what the hell is this card? But suddenly people are digging back into their bulk pile and picking up some old favorites. Wow.
Okay. Hayden might have more action points than he knows what to do with here. Rolling a 6 on Scabskins is always nice though. So the question is, off of 2 cards, what exactly can he do here? Definitely means there's potential for that club to make an appearance, but
like you said, you're an embarrassment of riches when it comes to action points in certain cases here. He might need to use one of those action points. He could, invest it in some low risk mutual funds and maybe have one in round 2. But unfortunately, right now, he might just be able to use 2 of them. But still, the fact that she got that 6 is a good omen here. It seems like Hayden Dale is just all systems go.
yeah, Savage Feast there revealing a 6 or more power card. So can draw a card off that. Again, give you more options or maybe a chance to sort of fuel the rest of your turn with all these extra action points. And obviously, Intimidate triggers come off of both Savage Feast and that Rhino activation. So Isaac is bracing here. He's bracing for a bit of a beatdown.
Oh, it's going to be huge. Isaac is going to get actually just smacked around. But the important part here is the fact that a lot of those on hits are not necessarily going to be detrimental to his hand. If his hand is completely intimidated away, that's actually not a bad thing. I've had this discussion with several people, and when you introduce cards or heroes like Rhinar and saying, oh, you get to intimidate cards away, a lot of the response sometimes from seasoned card players are like, why would I want my opponent to keep their hand? Don't I want them to sort of give me some options here to maintain a little bit of tempo, especially since Isaac, in this case, is presenting a Channel Mount heroic turn on the turnaround with an embodiment of lightning to open it. So in this case, he's going to block with some equipment. But I think Isaac's main concern here is just, all right, as long as I'm alive, we can turn this around big time.
Yeah, absolutely. Isaac knows he's going to take damage, but racing as the Briar player with that CMH up probably feels pretty good. 2 cards in hand, 1 resource floating for Hayden Dale, and 2 action points to spend here. So again, sometimes feast or famine with the Rhino, really depending what you draw into. It was obviously a block from the Crown of Providence there, as Isaac does sink away his arsenal card. Again, having some more cards to sort of play with when it does come back to your turn to make use of that CMH buff is pretty big. And Hayden now will be setting up for his next.
The Crown of Providence has really, shown its worth here. Whether it's thrown in there to protect a card from Command and Conquer out of your arsenal, for example, or just like you said, it's a free sync of some garbage that's just been lurking in your hand and just festering there. This is a good way to just soak some damage as well as fix your hand. But again, the uniqueness of this tournament, Uber, is the fact that it's all done on webcam. So in order to protect the integrity of the game, we've cropped the cameras for both players so that we can't see their hand, because what they see, their opponent can also see. So this is as much a mystery to us as seeing what's in their hand and how their turns are going to be, how they're going to unfold. So we don't know what Isaac was holding, because that setup is beautiful, but we've been there so many times, Uber, where you have the wonderful setup, the CMH, you have a great turn against your opponent. It's all systems go, but suddenly, the warning light comes on when you draw 4 non-attack actions or 4 action cards, attack actions with no go again. So we're going to see how he plays this, but it looks like it's a good start here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is kind of what you want to be looking at. Earthlore Surge comes into the snatch here. And of course, that embodiment of lightning in play. So this is a buffed up snatch coming in for a heck of a lot.
Oh, that is a massive one. 10. So you're getting a buff off the Earthlore Surge. You're getting a buff off Channel Mount Heroic. The Go Again is already built in from the embodiment of lightning. This is 10 Go Again on hit, draw a card. This is Briar at her most truest form.
And the question is here for Hayden, how much risk is there in giving Isaac another card? Probably pretty high. CMH is sat here on the field. And again, if there's another Earth card getting pitched away, then this starts to go from bad to worse for Hayden, who was only able to use 2 of those action points in that previous turn. He actually had 1 left over there, which is sometimes the case. And he'd be hoping to try and set up and try and find a way to race here, but this is pretty straightforward. The question is, excuse me, how much do I take? Are they probably going to get a card? There's a good chance. There are a couple of those cards in Rhino that don't block all that well if you're thinking about cards like Pulping and such, but there should be plenty of stuff available. There are defense reactions in Hayden's build as well, but nothing that quite gets you up to the 10. So some deliberation required here.
Oh, it's going to take some creative accounting, as it were. If that's a yellow unmovable in Arsenal, let's say, that can block for 7. If you have got a reckless swing, that'll cover the rest of the tab. Any 3 block plus a unmovable out of Arsenal is good, but it doesn't look like that's what's happening here. It looks like he's just going to go ahead and give him the whole kit. So that's a 10 block with 2 equipment, 4 off the equipment, 6 from the cards. That's a big block there from Hayden Dale, but still, that blocks the card draw from Snatch, assuming there's no combat tricks here. But Isaac, that's just the first chapter here, Uber. There's going to be so much more punch coming through.
Absolutely. Whether it's another attack with Go again into something involving Rosetta Thorn, Isaac looking at his hand, questioning, okay, do I have the ability to keep this Channel Man Heroic up this turn, or are we just going to strip Hayden's cards away and get tempo? Isaac obviously is at a 13 life deficit, so he definitely wants to start connecting, and this is where the Rhinar shifts very much into a defensive mode. That's evidenced by the Blood Rush Bellow being used to block there, such a key card for Hayden, in the event that he's actually able to go aggressive. And we'll also note that no sync in the arsenal there either.
No sync of the arsenal, so that's a card that he definitely values. It's definitely not a D-react, I don't suspect, but it very well actually, it still might be, but maybe it's just that was the best use right now of really rounding out the damage. Having a look really quick here at Isaac's list, I don't see, there's no lightning press, there's no razor reflex, there's nothing to really surprise your opponent. Obviously, right, at this juncture in the tournament, Hayden doesn't know that. The deck lists are closed to each player in round 1. But at any point, Isaac could have actually just, pressed that or razor reflexed it, perhaps, to really go over the top. Hayden just deciding to block it the most efficient way possible. A few more damage pieces coming through here. The Rosetta as a 2-2-1. And that is a very, very staunch defense from Hayden.
And he still has 2 cards to work with. Plus the arsenal. Bear in mind, obviously, he spends very heavily in terms of his equipment there. So he's really probably hoping to try and pivot off this turn. But even if he doesn't, he's probably happy enough denying Isaac that extra card. And he'll take 5 any day of the week when Isaac came in, of course, with that Rosetta Thorn. This time with the extra 2 Arcane. So Hayden's got 2 cards to work with. It's going to be a Lightning Strike here. We'll see what mode has been selected. Might just be like a straight 7.
Yep. That looks like a 7 to me. My eyes may deceive me, but it looks like that's basically all she wrote, which is still 7 is a pretty big card to deal with here. What's worth noting here, Uber, Isaac's got a double counterspawn on the Channel Mount Heroic. That is a rare feat, but Isaac managed to create a ongoing threat here. So Hayden dodged the first bullet, but it's a double barrel shotgun from Isaac here when it comes to the CMH.
All right, we're up to 3 counters on that 2 nick now. And yeah, I think it was actually 2 Earthlaw Surges ended up in the pitch zone for Isaac. So those extra cards, remember, one of them came off that Crown of Providence. He had the gas that he needed to keep that mount looking pretty imposing. Again, taking a ton of damage, already gone through half of his life. Tome of Harvests in the pitch here, and it's going to be a Sonata. It's going to be Sonata for, okay, so he's pitching 2 into that as well.
So there's 4 cards peeled off the top. That looks like a good match here. Is that another attack action? It is! So he's going to get to peel 2 Arcane coming through. We like that, especially with the Belittle. He found such a great recipe there. Wow, that was a huge pull.
Unbelievable. And again, Belittle being able to fetch a card either for that extra pump, or, of course, for some more resources. On a Channel Mount Heroic turn, getting max value out of your Sonata Arcanics is definitely going to strike fear into your opponent. Hayden obviously takes that 2 Arcane damage coming out there. He doesn't have any other option. It's scary. Isaac just went +1 in cards, I guess, from just the Sonata transaction with 1 floating from that Tome of Harvest. And yeah, brace yourself. It's going to be scary. Here's that red Belittle coming down.
That's going to show the Swarming Gloomveil was picked up by the Sonata Arcanics. Again, base strength, the base attack is 3 or less. That's going to peel a Minnowism. I suspect it's going to be a red one here. I think we're going all gas, no brakes here, as it's going to be dropped down and create an embodiment oh no, he's going blue. So we want fuel. He's got some gas in hand that he wants to pay for.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you see a Briar player reach for extra resources on a turn with Chanaman Heroic up, you start to get a little bit concerned. Either way, this is a gigantic belittle. Nothing to smirk at all. This is going to be coming in for 6. And this is just the beginning. Very scary stuff for Hayden here. And he's going to have to take some damage in this turn, I think. Trying to maintain cards is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, when the first episode of any season is just absolute gore-tastic and brutality, you can kind of plug in and be very, very intrigued in how this is going to go. And we saw it in the previous turn. It was a 10-point snatch with Go Again that Hayden had to block out completely. In this case, Belittle's going to be able to punch through. That is a embodiment of Earth, so that's going to beef up all your non-attack actions with +1 defense. So that 6 is there's a tome.
All right, Tome of the Arknight. Again, a card that can be hit or miss. Again, you reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, and if you have an attack action and a non-attack action in this way, you get to put both of them in your hand, and he got both of them. Autumn's Touch, Tome of Harvest. What an embarrassment of riches for Isaac right now.
Oh, and you know what? If he has an outlet to pitch both of those, he could keep CMH on the table for another turn, but there is still 2 floating, but that would be insanity. Absolute craziness if that's the case. He still has the Swarming Gloom Veil as well. That's existing there.
Again, with an embodiment of lightning, he may hope to spend that embodiment on something that doesn't already have Go Again built in. Still getting +3 Go Again off his next attack would be pretty astonishing. Bear in mind as well, we've had that Minnowism got fished out and has been pitched there. So 2 cards being pitched and 2 floating right now. Tome even going to be pitched. Surely not another channel mount. Okay, so Autumn's Touch coming in here. Nice and beefed up. Obviously great to block with for Briar. But ain't too shabby on the attack either. That is going to be 5 + 3, 8 damage coming in from that.
Okay, so he did pitch a Tome of Harvest. You said there's another non-attack action in his hand. That's an Earth card.
I didn't actually catch a glimpse of it, but if he did, that would be insane high roll.
If that's the case, if there's another Earth card, he can use the 2 floating to create a rune chant with his grasp, and then he could pitch the last card to actually swing with Rosetta Thorn and keep CMH for a 3rd turn. Hayden, in this case, it's like a kid at your friend's birthday party. You just sit there and watch them open all their gifts and pretend that you're happy about it. Yeah, here it is. He's just send me the bill, says Hayden, and he's going down to 19. How quickly this game is equalized.
And here's that Swarming Gloom Veil now. So comes in, going to be hitting pretty hard. We have 2 auras created this turn, if I'm not mistaken. With the embodiment of Earth already have been created. So 7 with Go Again.
That's a big one. So there was the embodiment of Earth, the embodiment of Lightning that was also created. I don't believe there was any other auras, if I'm not mistaken.
No rune chant yet.
He could have perhaps done it beforehand to give, all 3 criteria.
I mean, Hayden's not blocking arcane damage anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's in that case, it's just, we're going to keep those resources. I think I'm not sure how many cards Isaac has left. I mean, he started the turn with 4 in hand, and who knows where the hell he's at now. There's 3 in the pitch zone. There's like 19 on the table. Who knows what the hell's going on Isaac's side? This is the Iceman. He's
to play. He's on 4 cards this turn. 4 cards. 2 off Sonata, 2 off that Tome of the Arknight.
That is illegal. That is absolutely illegal. Not actually. By the rules, he is playing correctly. But by the gigantic cosmic universe, he is ripping through time and space. And Hayden is just a passenger here, watching as Isaac Krut is doing Isaac Krut things. Just, relentless with this attack that CMH has haunted Hayden since a few turns, 3 turns ago.
It's one of them poltergeists that you can't seem to shoo away from your attic here, just rattling all the furniture in the house as Hayden now is deliberating on a block. He tried to maintain his hand for as long as he could, right? He let that sort of Autumn's Touch come through. He let that go to the keeper, as we say where I'm from. But 7 power here on this Swarming Gloom Veil is nothing to sneer at. And Hayden has to now decide what his next turn looks like in the event that he's just trying to keep his head above water now. Again, hey, life for a life's turned on, so a scar for a scar. So I guess that's exciting, but Hayden needs to really deliberate on this. So
silver lining Uber, you're such a kind soul. Just saying, don't worry, Hayden, your life for a life is on. That's the best. Every time I used to take damage on turn 0, I'd be like, just turn it on my scar for a scar. Nothing to see here.
I threatened
Absolutely.
all with that, and he didn't take me seriously, and I hit him with 3 scars in 1 turn once. So.
Oh, it's not over, Uber. We're
Oh
going to go
my
ahead and play
god.
Belittle with the floating resource, showing promise of plenty. We're going to go ahead and yoink out another Minnowism. This is the gas right here. And you know this turn is going to be absolutely insanity. This turn has gone on since, I think, Christmas of last year is when it began, but we're still at it.
Again, promise of plenty there, not coming out of the arsenal, so won't have go again. Still great to tuck that later on for Isaac, that Minnowism. Unclear how he's looking to make use of that, but Hayden is just taking an utter beating now. And you sort of know what follows this up normally, right? Creepers? Excuse me?
Hold on, we're not done here because you can creepers in that Minnowism to just go ahead and sneak in a little bit more jam. Why not? Why
That
not?
extra damage is messed up. Yeah, he sneaks that in after the fact, I think, as he comes in with his card just to buff that a little up. And okay, here's that promise of plenty now coming out.
Promise of plenty again at this juncture.
That's the promise getting buffed, excuse me.
Yeah, the promise, because it says the next one that you do. So the belittle is not the next one. It would be the promise of plenty. Now, again, off the back of a channel mount heroic, there's a Minnowism red that's going to buff up the promise of plenty. This conversation here, you do not play safe, Uber. When you have the channel mount heroic, you send everything. You want to end the turn with no arsenal, no resources, and everything possibly sent to your opponent. As you see, Hayden Dale here drops to 3. This turn began as with a Sonata Arcanix and ended about 42 cards later.
Yeah, that is absolutely absurd. Hayden had to give up most of his hand there, and now he's looking down the barrel of at least a field that doesn't include Channel Mount Heroic for the time being. Tunic counter here, and there it is. I told you.
You're
Life for a life, coming back in.
You are what we call in Canada a genius. An absolute genius. Congratulations. But you're right. Again, silver lining here. Hayden Dale says, well, at least this works. At least I've got this using the tunic resource too. So freebie. Congratulations, Hayden Dale. It's not bad, buddy.
Again, definitely the looming threat of not being able to deal with any of the arcane damage would be coming his way. Would be an issue. What is this? He's blocking with the... Okay,
yeah, I
with the
love
creep.
it. Isaac Krut doesn't take a day off, and in this case, he's like, I don't need these boots anymore, and I don't want to give you any extra, if you want an inch, I ain't going to give you a mile or any of that. He's sending everything and blocking the way that he otherwise would. If this was the World Championship Finals, he's blocking the same way. He doesn't want to take anything for granted, and he's not, because that's another CMH.
Oh, and of course, followed up with an Autumn's Touch here, so still going to be hitting like an absolute truck. That's 8 damage coming in. And Hayden is trying to figure out how to cobble a term together. We know that Reinhardt can really swing the game in an incredible way, but this is, I mean, you have no choice here. You have to block with more than one card. Hayden now just staring down the barrel of this. They're always used as an attacker. Like I said, it's incredible to block with when you've got, or to sort of power your CMHs here, but pretty handy in a pinch. And on a CMH setup turn, doesn't feel too bad. CNC, first card dedicated to this block. It's going to be another one. And there's the sync.
I like it. Just foregoing any of the formalities of attack reactions. All right, I'm just going to drop the sync because it doesn't really matter. I need a 2-card hand if I'm ever going to get back into this. And this is what Hayden has to keep in the back of his mind, is that if I don't ever swing back, then there's nothing going on here. So we're going to sneak through for a little bit of damage here, create an embodiment of Earth that Channelman Heroic is going to stay around. He's going to inherit that into the turn over. And now it's up to Hayden. And like you said, Uber, you can do some nasty things. And in this case, he's going to gain a life playing Fyandel's Fighting Spirit, pitching blue. This is coming in for 8 attack. And if Isaac finds the right recipe here, he's just going to sign for this and send it back.
Yeah, obviously being able to gain a life. Another card that feels good when playing from behind here. Hayden just trying to stick an attack his way. Looks like it was obviously the 6 power coming in from the...
Oh, that's my bad. Yeah.
Spirit. Sorry, you get a pass.
I
You're
do.
The first one.
That's my breakfast ball, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, God. It's fused. Bramble Spark fused with the CMH shown. Oh, good Lord. Writing might be on the wall here. Okay. Overload comes in, and remember, it has Dominate for a 3-power card. Doesn't seem that compelling, but how about a 9-power Dominate with Go Again on hit if we even get there?
Let's not forget that there was an arcane damage that snuck through. There's not much he can do. He's got the D-React out of the pocket, too. He's putting himself to 0 and saying, is that it? What are we looking at over here? Because that 9 Dominate, he could have, I think, actually given up perhaps a tunic here. He still had to block off the tunic if necessary, but there's only showing 6 block off the 9. So I'm wondering if this is all she wrote. I think so. That is it, Mitch. And I don't think there was any doubt that it was going to be Issak from the once that CMH came down on the second turn. I think it was basically, the runaway train in that regard.
I mean, by what was it, 4 or 5 turns, and you saw all 3 of those CMHs come up there. And this is something that obviously Briar can offer you. Just the sheer length of a turn where you hit twice on a Sonata Arcanics, you hit on the Tome of the Arknight. You're able to keep these cards coming. There's belittles, there's minnowisms being thrown in there. That is simply too much for really any deck to deal with. And if you can't disrupt the Briar player before that happens, they will gladly use their life as a resource to take all that damage and swing back even harder. This is kind of what she does best. I do want to say, obviously, Hayden doesn't get to show a lot of what this deck is capable of doing, this Reinhardt deck. I will say that he has a deck tech coming out on it on Arsenal Pass. So go check that out if you want to see what this deck is actually geared up to do, because I really like the inclusion of some of these less standard generic attack actions. In fairness, Hayden gained a fair bit of life off a lot of those effects. Finals Fighting Spirit, Life for Life. Not enough here, as Briar can truly be overwhelming in situations like that, especially if you can't disrupt them. And I love the point you brought up, Flake, right? Intimidate means that Briar essentially is forced to hold onto those cards. Take the option away to block with them, which means that she's going to hit you really hard when she gets them back.
It's always fascinating to me because when it comes down to it, which of the 2 decks is the more RNG dependent to a degree, or the more affected by it? Because you look at Reinhardt, which rolls dice and discards random cards and such. Sure, there's some RNG elements of that, but when it comes to a potent Briar offense, if you're not having that right balance between non-attack actions and attack actions, for instance, like we're talking, that Sonata Arcanics peeling 4 cards off the top, it found the right 2 and 2. All the Tome finding the right recipe as well. So there is a certain amount of elements there as well. And the amount of complaining I've ever heard in my life has mostly come from Briar players when it comes to, well, if I only drew.
Oh, you sure it's not
attack-
people losing to fatigue in the Oldham matchup?
Oh, no, those are also salty. Hey, check out Salty Logs, ladies and gentlemen, coming out weekly on 983 Media. Ultimately, it's hard to downplay just how incredible of a player Issak Krut is. He is so dedicated to every card game he's ever played. He's also one of the nicest guys. And seeing him succeed just slightly dials down the amount of angst and anger I have towards him when I'm paired up against him at every freaking local.
I was going to
tournament.
say, I think you're just trying to inject good karma into the world so that the powers that be don't pair you up against him in that first round and force you to submarine. Obviously, that was our matchup there. Great. Big shout out to both our players. Thank you, of course, Hayden, for joining us here in the Goliath Gauntlet. We're hoping to bring him back for one in the future. Issak Krut looked completely dominant there. What a matchup. Let's have a look at our bracket and give you a bit of a lay of the land for where we are so far. So only second game down. Obviously, that first matchup was pretty insane. The Ice Queen going up against one of the kings of that New Zealand scene, and the latter advancing there. Now we have Issak Krut moving on to the next round, setting up another incredible matchup when we actually get to those quarterfinals. So stay tuned for more coverage of the Goliath Gauntlet. We've got many more matches where that's come from. And hey, hit us with your feedback. I know I messed up the Rosetta Form. Don't hold it against me. We'll be back with more very, very soon.